Over the millennia, people have been asking questions like, is there free will? Or is the universe just a collection of random events? Or is there an entity called God that's pulling all the strings? Is me taking a shit and my shit going through the labyrinths of my intestines actually God's will? Or is it actually my own desire to say, yeah, it's time to shit? The answer is both yes and no. Yes, it's your own desire to do whatever you're doing right now, and no, it's something else entirely. Something greater might be at play here. Here's why. Before we go deeper into this free will of mankind is sort of wanting you to click that subscribe and like button. That would be great. These are some of the more common struggles for free will throughout history. War. A nation invades another nation because that nation has some precious resources the other nation doesn't have. But they say, wait a minute, this is mine. Get the hell away from here. So people went on to become resistance fighters, trying to fight off the enemies. This decision to fight is perceived to be an act of free will, out of genuine passion for justice and defending one's own rights. This seems legit. And then there's slavery. One is forced to work long hours of hard manual labor without any reasonable rewards to show for it. Then obviously he wants to find an escape out of that hellhole and looks for a better life somewhere. This burning desire to escape seems to be born of free will. And then there's free expression. Under totalitarian communist regimes like China and Soviet Union in the early 20th century, the sole purpose of the people was only to serve the state government. No one was free to do anything for himself. Thousands of written books of philosophy were burned solely because they were an indication of some extent of liberalism and free will. Likewise, many works of art also suffered the same fate, for exactly the same reasons. Even though it might be weak and tiny, some glimmer of free will still existed during those trying times nonetheless. And lately, in the 21st century, the struggle for financial freedom and away from corporate slavery is rapidly emerging. Freelancers and digital nomads start flying around the globe to work remotely while sipping on avocado juice on some beach in Thailand. This is the life, says free man. And thanks to free will, I get to live the kind of life I want to live. But is any of this really free will? Free will seems to indicate that there is an I behind our eyes that's been pulling all the strings and controlling all the events happening around us. Is this I actually doing all the work? Or is it just a lifeless, substanceless entity that does pretty much nothing other than merely observing everything that happens around it while deluding itself to be the doer of its actions? There is a cause behind everything that happens. Behind every action, there is a desire. Behind every desire, there's an idea of the alternative that's supposedly better than what you currently have. And behind that idea, there's the messenger of that idea. We can certainly say that the messenger is most definitely not us. He came to you not because you requested his presence. He just came for some weird cosmic reasons. Going back to the resistance fighter. Before the war broke out in his own country, he was a peaceful farmer trying to make a living for himself and his family. And yet when the invaders came, he had two choices. Either to stay as a farmer, living in hiding with his family, cowering in fear, or to say, fuck it, and join the resistance forces and do his country proud. Which he did. But why? Because he has a desire to protect the country he loves. And unlike most folks in his country, he actually sees the alternative to helplessly being invaded by someone else by actually choosing to fight. And who created this idea in him? Turns out he got this idea to fight from reading about a brave samurai in Japan, and he wanted to be like him. But imagine if someone else gave him some books about romance and sexy stuff instead. Things would have changed significantly for him. His resolve would grow weaker. And maybe now he believes that showing compassion to your enemies is the way to go. Instead of going to war, he decides to hide himself from the enemies. The thought of dying for his country never crossed his mind at all. What's the point if I die and don't get to enjoy the fruits of my efforts? That's what he says. All that he is and has become has culminated from the ideas he has studied throughout his life, brought to him by some messengers that he met on a random sunny day. Whether you like it or not, everything that happens to you is fundamentally interconnected to everything that happens to everyone else in this shared space called Earth. There's a small chance that who you are right now is perhaps the result of something a person did back in 500 BC in ancient Egypt. Right now, maybe you are working in a job that you hate, for a boss that you hate even more. At this point, basically you have two choices. Either to continue working for the same evil boss, or do the alternative, which is totally different. And then you become somewhat unsure about what to do. But because you stumbled across some guy on YouTube by chance who says that you do have alternatives, you decide to quit and go to the forest and become a monk. I'm that messenger that turns your life upside down, for better or for worse. I bring to you what you previously hadn't known, a different way of life that's supposed to make your life better than it currently is. I'm as much a part of you as the self residing behind your eyes that incorrectly believes that it's getting most of the work done. In other words, I'm you. Then you say, oh fuck off, you're not me. I have my own freaking desires. How do you think I came across your video? It's because I've always been interested in this sort of metaphysical stuff. No one told me to watch all this stuff before. I did it because I wanted to. Actually you didn't want to, old boy. You just didn't want the other thing. You were bored and had nothing to do, so you had to go and look me up on YouTube. Your desire is basically a rebound from something that you dislike. Your desire of watching a random guy on YouTube was born of boredom. Boredom is the thing that's pushing you all over the internet. Loneliness is the thing that's pushing you around the city looking for cheap sex. These emotions are something that you feel, but ultimately they are not you. You are merely that invisible entity that's unknowingly been subjected to these unseen forces beyond your comprehension and awareness. There is no free will. Everything is being done unto you, whether you like it or not. The choice you thought you consciously made was already made for you, even before the question even came up. The decision you are probably mulling over right now was already made for you, waiting to unveil itself when the time comes. Obviously, you wouldn't be able to figure everything out where you stand right now. Things only get clearer moving forward. So just relax and watch this whole show unfold. Take your hands off the handles and just watch. There's nothing you should do and nothing you can do. Enjoy whatever hands you're dealt with. If something bad happens to you, it's not just your fault, but also the fault of every other person that's come into contact with you. If something good happens to you, it's not purely down to your genius, but also down to the wisdom of every other person that has touched you personally. Our universe is deeply interconnected. What you receive would change you, in the same way what you give to someone else would change him. We are dust flying around in space, dancing and bouncing and bumping off one another without a destination in sight. Just keep dancing and bouncing around. What we end up becoming? I've no idea.